joining us on Splash Studio Online. My name is Jessie. I'll be walking you through this painting here called Autumn Tree. So I'm a recent graduate of the Maya Institute of Art and Design, so I do a lot of painting in my free time. So I'll be happy to walk you guys through this whole painting, all the colors, all the techniques, all the instructions, and whatnot. But before that, we have some supplies that I have to go over with you guys. So we've got a couple brushes here. You should have 4. You should have the large flat brush. We've got the medium flat brush, the medium round brush, as well as the small detail brush. So I'll be telling you which ones we're going to be using throughout our painting here. We've also got this cup of water here that we're going to be using for washing off our brushes in between colors, and it's also a great place to kind of just let your brushes sit whenever you're not using them. So that being said, we've also got this rag here that's great for drying off your brushes once you have switched colors, or once you have just, you need to use the brush again. So we've got all of that here, guys. Now, since this is a video, whenever you guys feel like you need to let your paint dry or just take a break, feel free to pause this video and then restart it whenever you want to get started again. Okay, so our first step is going to be the sky here in the background. So we've got a lot of blues, some purples, and some lighter shades here. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to grab my largest flat brush here. And what I'm going to do is mix up quite a bit of white with some blue to start off. Now don't worry if your painting doesn't look quite like mine or even the original. Mine's not going to look the same because everybody paints differently, and we all kind of want to let our individuality show. So don't even worry if it's not, quite like the painting. You guys do what makes you happy. So if there's anything you want to change, feel free to go for it. But so for the sky, it takes about 2/3 of the top of the painting. So I'm just going to decide where my sky is going to end, and I'm going to make a line kind of show that. And then you're just going to go ahead and fill in the sky with this color. Now don't worry if your horizon line isn't straight. Mine definitely isn't. We're going to be covering that up with the ground as well as the mountains here in the background. So I'm just continuing to fill this in, and feel free, guys, if you want, you can add some darker shades of blue, and if you're feeling really creative, you can even go ahead and add in some red. You'll see that'll kind of turn into a purpley color once you mix it in with the blue. So you guys feel free to kind of play around with these colors and kind of get some cool color variations so you can make it look kind of unique, or just however you want it to look. That being said, I will let you guys work on this for a couple of minutes, and I'll get back to you when you are ready to start again. Alrighty guys, so once you have finished your sky, we're going to move down to our grass here. So you can see it's got a nice gradient of like a light yellow, meadowy kind of feel down to a dark green. So we're just going to start with the base color right now, and that is just the light yellowish green here that we've got. So I'm going to wash off my large flat brush. And then right on my palette, I'm going to take my yellow, my blue, and my white, and I'm gonna, so first I'm gonna mix some blue and yellow into my white just to get a kind of light green color. And you want to kind of mess around with it until you get your desired color, but I'm just taking quite a lot of yellow and white, I would say. Just a little bit of blue to get that nice kind of limey yellowy color. Okay. So now that you've got this color, this is just a really simple step. You just want to cover this entire bottom, the rest of the white part of your canvas with this yellow color. So super simple. And you still don't really have to worry about getting a straight horizon line because again, we've still got the mountains in the background that we can take care of that with. Plus, land isn't completely flat or straight or anything, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm just gonna again cover this entire bottom part with this kind of limey, yellowy green color. Maybe add a little bit more white at the top, just so I can cover all that blue. There you go. So once you've done this, guys, we do want to take a bit of a break just to let this all dry. So go ahead, pause the video, take a 5-10 minute break, do what you gotta do, and then when you're ready to start painting again, you can just unpause the video. Alrighty guys, so once this is all nice and dry, we're going to go back into our sky and do all these clouds. So you can see they've got like a base layer of just like a white, and then they've got some purples and some yellows in them as well. So what I'm going to do is I've taken my medium round brush here, and I'm going to dip into pure white. And you can do as many or as little as these clouds as you want, but you can see that they're kind of fatter and like taller in the middle, and then they kind of taper out on the end. So I'm going to start one right here, and I'm doing kind of some swirling motions with my brush, just like that, to make them look nice and fluffy. So I'm getting the kind of middle part of the cloud down, making it nice and fluffy, and then I'm just tapering them out on the ends. And then it's okay if it also goes off the canvas, kind of creates a sense of depth where the picture kind of continues off of the canvas. And so once you've got your first cloud in, feel free to keep on going. I'm just fixing up my ends here. And your clouds can be any number of shapes. If you want them to be short or like fat or, you know, thin, it's up to you. There's a lot of different types of clouds out there. So if you want to keep it simple, just go ahead and follow along with me, or if you want to look something up on your own, that's also an option. I'm just going to keep on going with these clouds. Alright, so now that the base of my clouds are done, we can go in and add some fun colors to them. So I'm still using my medium round brush, and I'm not going to bother washing it off because it's going to help white on it anyway. So what I'm going to do is take some white in my palette here. I'm going to find a place to mix in just a little bit of red and some blue. So you can get a nice light purple here that I have in the corner. So again, that's white, mostly white, a little bit of red and some blue, and you can kind of mix and match. If you want your purple to be more warm toned, you can add more red, or if you want it to be more cool, like violet, you can add more blue. It's up to you. But I'm just doing a nice neutral purple that I'm going to add just to the bottoms of our clouds here. And I want to make sure that I don't cover the cloud completely. I want to still see some of that white peeking out. But if your white is still wet, it'll kind of blend out nicely once you mix that purple in there. But if it doesn't, no worries. I kind of like the patchy look as well. You can always go back in with white and kind of blur the edges between the purple and the white if you want them to blend a little bit more. Using water is also a great way to mix and blend your acrylic paints together. I'm just laying this purple on here. Whenever I think there should be like a shadow on the clouds. I might go in with some white and kind of bring that back So if any of you think you added a little bit too much purple, you can always go back with white and just bring that back, or blend the colors together just a little bit more. And that's kind of an optional step. So then the last part of our clouds here is just going to be to add some of this bright yellow that's on the tops of the clouds. So I'm going to wash off my brush, still using the medium round brush, and I'm just going to dip into pure yellow here that I've got on my palette. And I don't want to use too much, so I'm also kind of rubbing it off just a little bit on my rag so I don't have a lot of paint on my brush. And then I'm just going to add this very sparingly to the tops of my clouds. Again, you can add as much or as little of this as you want. That's totally up to you. Just to have a little bit of maybe sunlight that's hitting the clouds. Make it look like a sunny day. Alright, so that is the clouds. I'll let you guys keep on working on it, and then we want to let this dry, so take another short 5-minute break while you work on this, and then whenever you're ready to come back, just unpause the video. Alrighty guys, so once you have completely done your clouds and everything is dry, we're going to go ahead and work on our first set of mountains. So you can see we've got this taller set of mountains that's kind of like a dark green, and then down here there's a shorter, kind of darker band of mountains. That's going to be our second one. So the first one is just going to be this one. And so I'm still using my medium round brush. This one's great for just kind of sketching out shapes and all that stuff. So we want to mix up a dark green for this. So what I'm going to do is take some of this yellow, and then I'll grab some blue. I'll probably do more blue than yellow just to make it a nice cool green, but if you want it to be more kind of emeraldy, feel free to add more yellow. But once you've got this color, guys, the mountains are just kind of a series of, you know, points and valleys, so really you can just do kind of whatever heights you want. I'm just kind of going up and down with my brush. And again, if you want them to be taller, you can always make them taller, so I can just kind of go over them and be like, I want this one to be taller. So it's always, I would say it's always best to kind of start off smaller, because then you can always make things bigger, whereas it's not always the easiest to make things smaller once they're already larger, you know. But, so yep, I'm just going to go in and fill in the mountains once I like the outline that I've made. And you still don't quite have to worry about your horizon line just yet. I mean, you can kind of correct the shape if you want to kind of make it a little bit flatter. But again, we've still got this second band of mountains that we want to take care of after that, so that's really when we're going to worry about the horizon line. So for now, I'm just going to keep on filling in my mountains, getting them to be the shape that I like. If you really want to go crazy with your mountains, what you can do is take your detail brush, smallest one you got, and you can use that to make your mountains super pointy. So you can just kind of really get the tops of those mountains to be extra pointy. That's an optional kind of step. That's for you guys to decide. It's just a nice way to kind of solidify the shape of your mountains. Make sure it's the way you like it. But there you have the mountains, guys. We want to let this dry before we go in with our second band of mountains, so feel free to just take another short little break and let this dry before we come back and work on that second band of mountains. Alrighty guys, so once you've got your first layer of mountains in and they're nice and dry, we're going to go ahead and work on the lower layer of mountains that's a little bit darker. So I'm taking my medium flat or round brush again, and I'm going to use the same color essentially that I used for this, except I'm just going to add a little bit of black to it to make it darker. So I've still got that color that I was using earlier in my corner there. I'm just going to add a little bit of black to that. If you need to make more, all you have to do is mix blue and yellow together and then add a little bit of black. And I would be sparing with your black because it goes a long way, so I would just add a little bit at a time. But once I've got the color that I like, we're going to go in and essentially just do kind of like a wiggly line for the tops of our mountains. So I'm just going up and down just a little bit. That lower band of mountains in there. Now this is the part where we want to kind of be careful with our horizon line, just because this is the last thing that we're going to add along here. So I'm just gonna, I might add a little bit of water to my paint also, just to make it spread a little bit smoother. I'm just going along the horizon line, just kind of carving it out so it's nice and even, and then I'm just filling in the rest of the mountains. Alright, yep, that looks good to me. So that is your second layer of mountains, guys. If you want to go back and fix anything up, feel free to do so. But we are going to start to move on to the grass and the trees and all that in just a couple of minutes. So I'll let you guys keep working on the rest of your painting until we come back and do that. Alrighty guys, so once your mountains are all dry, we're going to move down into our grass. So we've got kind of 3 shades of grass going here on top of our base of that lime green that we made. So it starts with kind of a really bright yellow, it goes into a medium green, and then a dark green. So we're going to start with the lightest color first. So I'm grabbing my medium flat brush this time, and I mixed together just yellow and white. So I took some of my yellow, I brought it over here, and added a little bit of white to it. I'm going to use this flat brush just because it adds kind of nice texture when you're using it in like a vertical fashion, I guess. So what we're going to do is just kind of use this brush and go in upward strokes. Just really simple, upward, choppy little strokes to kind of simulate the texture of grass. Now don't worry if your kind of brush strokes go over the horizon like mine did. It kind of lets it have a nice brushy kind of grass texture, so I wouldn't worry about that if it happens. But I'm just doing this color over the top third of my ground here, because then we're going to go in with the medium green and then the darker green after that. And I might bring it down just a little bit so it blends in with those other colors once I put them on there. But I'm just going to go over the top 1/3 of my ground with this color. Now if you do want to take a break to let this dry, or just, you know, take a little break, you can, but we don't necessarily need it to let it dry, so we can go ahead and add in our other colors as well. I got a little bit of black on my ground there, and that's okay. The nice thing about acrylic paint is you can kind of just go over it when it's wet and just blend it away. Or if you do that and don't notice it and then it gets dry, you can just go right over it. That's what is really nice about acrylic paint, is you can just kind of cover up anything you don't like and just move on. So now that we've got that color in there, I'm going to go ahead and I'm keeping this color, but I'm also just going to add a little bit of blue to it, just so I can get kind of a medium green. And then I'm going to do the same thing that I've been doing, just kind of a little bit lower and overlapping that light yellow that we just put in there. So I'm going to add a little bit more blue. Just trying to get the color that I like. Nice medium green. There, that looks good. So once again, you're just overlapping this color over the yellow. I still want to be able to see some of that yellow though, so I'm not going up all the way. And I'm just doing those same upwards choppy strokes that I did before. And you don't need to cover the entire, like, it doesn't need to be a solid color when you're doing this. I kind of like to let that background color that we put in there show through, just to add a little bit of variety. Alright, so now that I've got that color in there, we're going to do that last shade of green. So I am going to wash off my brush so I can get all of the white out of there, because we don't want it to be super light. So then I'm just going to take some blue and some yellow, mix them together, kind of like we did for the mountains. But this time I want it to be kind of an equal mix of blue and yellow. So it's a nice true green. And then I'm just going to go ahead and fill in the rest of that bottom part of my canvas with this color. And I'm kind of going up into that second shade we had just to kind of blend them a little bit together, but I don't want to go too far. But again, I'm just doing my choppy vertical strokes to cover the rest of the bottom of my canvas with this color. Alright, that looks good to me. Maybe not. Alright, there we go. So once you guys have all of your grass done, we want to take another little break here just to let this all dry before we start going in and doing our tree and all of the leaves and all of that entails. So got another little short 5-minute break, and then so you pause the video, and then whenever you're ready to start painting again, you can just unpause it and we'll get working again. Alrighty guys, so once your grass is completely dry, we're going to go in and add the trunk and branches of our tree, so basically just the skeleton of our tree, I guess you would call it. So for this, I've got my tiny detail brush. You can use this, or you can use your medium round brush. You can use both, it's really up to you. And I'm going to be mixing up blue, just a little bit of blue with some brown. We want to get a darker brown, so I'm doing mostly brown and a little bit of blue. So this tree is kind of placed off to the right side of our canvas, so I'm just going to pick a spot where I want it to start. It's kind of in between, it's kind of in the middle of the top and bottom though, so I'll just kind of guesstimate where I want it to be, and that is where it's going to be. So for trees, guys, are pretty simple. All you really got to know is that the trunk is always going to be thicker than the branches. So I start off the trunk thickest at the bottom, and we all know that trees aren't going to be necessarily straight, so it doesn't have to be straight, but then as you go up, it's going to taper out, it's going to get smaller, and then as you go, you can also feel free to add other branches that are coming off in every which way. Again, trees come in all shapes and sizes, so you don't really have to worry about where you put your branches or how many you put. You just want to make sure that the branches are kind of getting smaller and smaller as they grow away from the trees, or the trunk, sorry. So I'm just going in, I'm adding some branches. And again, you don't really have to worry about your branches being too complex or too detailed, because again, we're going to add all of this leaves on top of them as well. But again, I'm just going in and adding some branches just to give the leaves something to kind of rest on, to grab a hold of. Adding smaller branches near the top. And there, that is good enough for me. That is a basic tree shape. If you want to do a different kind of tree, like you want to do a pine tree or some specific sort of tree, feel free to look that up and do that. That's up to you guys. I'm just doing the normal tree that we've got here. And again, I've got my branches down. So we want to just add a little bit of detail to our trunk now. And I'm just going to grab a little bit of white and mix it in with some brown, just to get a lighter brown. And all you're going to do is add this to the side of the trunk, just a little bit to give it some shine, maybe some variation in the texture, some interest, all that kind of stuff. So feel free to work on that. Oh, the last thing you also want to do with this is we're going to add some brown to the bottom of our tree for a shadow. So I'm going to go ahead, I put my detail brush in the water cup, and I'm going to grab my medium round brush, dry that off. And I'm just going to take that same color that we used for the tree, so that's just that brown mixed with a little bit of blue. And I don't want to get too much on my brush because I don't want it to be super prominent underneath the tree, but you can see that there's this little shadow. So I'm just going to add that. I'm going to dab this color underneath the tree really lightly, just to get a little bit of a shadow. And if you want to go the extra mile, you can add a little bit more, kind of closer to the trunk, just to get a little bit darker. And that is that. So I will let you guys work on this. Feel free to take a break after your tree trunks and branches are all done to let them dry before we start working on the leaves. Alrighty guys, so once you've got your tree branches in there and they're all dry, we're going to start adding our leaves. So there's a bunch of different colors here in there. We've got our reds, oranges, some yellows, even some whites and browns, really just fall colors. If you want to do different colors, if you want to do like regular green leaves for summer, or if you want to do like some crazy colors like purples, feel free to go for it. But I'm just going to follow along here. And I am going to take my trusty medium round brush once again. Spoiler alert, this is my favorite brush, so I love using it. And then I'm just going to go in first with red, and I'm just going to blot this color all over my tree, just to simulate the kind of texture of leaves. And your leaves don't all have to be attached to your tree. You can have some of them kind of just like floating around those branches like a halo. You can have some kind of up on top. But I'm covering most of my branches with this color because you don't really need to see the branches of the tree all that much. I might even bring some down by my trunk. Really covering my branches with this color. Now, a trick to make it look more realistic if you want is to kind of clump your branches. So I'll have areas where it's thicker, where the color is thicker, and areas where the leaves are kind of a little bit farther apart. Now you can see this tree has got leaves that are kind of, falling off and kind of going into the wind. So what we want to do is just have some of this color trailing off in little bits away from the tree. Now you can add a lot of leaves coming off the tree, or you can add just a little. It's up to you, and they can kind of go off the canvas if you want. But I'm just adding this red color. And you really don't need to wait for the colors to dry before going into the next one. So, but if you do want to pause, feel free to do so whenever you need. And then I'm also going to add some of these leaves on the ground where they have kind of fallen off of the tree. It's also a good way to kind of mask the bottom of your trunk of your tree. If it looks a little awkward, you can just kind of put some leaves on top of it and make that transition a little bit smoother. Now if you want to add some more leaves in like random places along the ground, absolutely feel free to do so. I'm just putting a couple off to the side where they might have like fallen this way if the wind is kind of pushing them that way. So once you have gotten that, we're going to add some other colors here to our leaves. So I'm going to go in with a light yellow. So I'm going to grab some yellow and some white. Mix them together. And then go in and do the same thing. Just kind of add them onto your tree. Now if it's still wet, you can see that they're kind of starting to blend together. I kind of like it. I don't mind it. Kind of adds a nice quality to it. But if you want to wait for it to dry, if you want those colors to be completely separate, just pause the video, wait for it to dry, and then just continue on when you're ready. But I am going to keep going with this color. You just want to make sure that you don't cover all of the red with the yellow, because we want to be able to see it coming through. We want to be able to overlap those colors and see all of them. I'm also adding some on the bottom, just like I did with the red. And again, if you feel like you added too much of one color, you can always go back and add in some more red if you want to cover up some of that. The red is kind of like our darkest color that we're going to be using on the tree, so it can act like a kind of shadow, if you will. You can go in and kind of fix that up if I want. So then the last color we're going to be adding to our trees is a light reddish orange, just kind of a medium between the yellow and the red. So what I'm going to do is grab some yellow and then just a touch of red, or if you want to just use your straight orange, you can absolutely do so. So again, that's going to be red, yellow, and a little bit of white to get that orange. And you're just going to do the same thing and just dab this color on there. And I really do like the look of how they all blend together, so I'm just going to keep on going. If you guys again want to take another short break here, absolutely do so. But I'm just going to add this on here, on the bottom a little bit, and then trailing off. So you can see my branches are almost completely covered. If you do want to go in and kind of make a few parts of the branches sort of show through again, you can go back in with your detail brush and that brown and blue mixture we used for the trunk, and you can just add little segments of those branches kind of poking through the leaves. They're going in and going out of the leaves. Just kind of have them poking up all around. And that is up to you. So that being said, that concludes our painting autumn tree. Thank you guys for painting with me here for Splash Studio Online. Feel free to tag us on Facebook or Instagram with your final paintings. We'd love to see what you guys have made. Stay safe out there, stay safe and healthy, And yeah, so that's it. If you want to sign your painting, you can do that. It's just your detail brush, a little bit of black, and your initials in the bottom corner there, just to kind of signify that this is your painting and that you are really proud of it, because you should be, guys. But again, thanks for painting with us, and we'll see you on the next time.